Everyone. Get through our morning prep here a little bit later in the morning. Still relishing in the fact that I joined the Hole in One Club yesterday on my golf round. Very euphoric state to be in when you are as avid golfer like myself. But that aside, let's take a look at where we're at right now. Right, we're coming into today on potentially a significant gap here. Gapping below that 4,300 number on the ES. So, I think to keep this as simple as possible for me is I have levels and I have ranges where I believe supply and demand zones exist. So this 78 area is definitely an area of interest to me. I have it marked. I took an early long off this in S period here and made some decent profit. But now, we're finding temporary balance. And, where we're balancing is not really, out of reason that we're having some pause there, because this level here, even this 4290 range, has worked as previous resistance. So now we're kind of balancing over that previous resistance, somewhat as support right now, with this 77 range as being the backstop. If you don't know what a backstop is, it's something I've kind of come up with in my own mind over the years of watching Market Profile. I go over it quite in detail in the Market Profile series, but nonetheless, I think it's a very simplistic play today. The market clearly had a negative reaction in the Globex period in the overnight session. To what? I'm not really sure. I didn't really find anything that would cause such a move. But nonetheless, here we are, right? We're putting a pretty decent low right now as far as getting the low against the backstop in our Globex session. Now, this low could definitely change. But as it stands for me right now, I'll really just be monitoring where we open for one. And for two, if we come and attack this low from Globex and attack this 77, how we react down there. Now, I know what you're all thinking. I'm thinking the same thing. Every time we seem to have a downside gap, every time we get downside singles, it's really just a buying opportunity for buy the dip type traders. And it could potentially be the same today. And I don't want to fight that. So being patient and being willing to observe what's going to take place today, I think is going to pay dividends. As far as where I want to get involved, really, I just want to wait and monitor. I don't want to chase this market much lower on the short side. I will be willing to, though, if we do come up, let's say, to the 07 area, 4307, and fail to get any sort of aggression. I want to go with this downside gap on the short side. If we do open and push towards our Globex slope, towards that 77, and find an aggressive bid and find some absorption there, well, then I want to join that buy the dip party and see potentially what could come from it. So that's kind of where I'm at, on the ES itself. I think the ES will be very tradable today. Likewise, I think all the markets will. Taking a quick look at our day time frame. So we had mentioned this, what was it, Tuesday, as being potentially just the breakdown of the late buyers here. Now, I didn't get a chance to watch much of yesterday. I was enjoying the day, on the golf course, but you built higher value on what looked to be a pretty strong recovery. But what happened is you failed again, right? They failed again to really break above and really get carried away through the all-time high. There was no aggression. There was no continuation. And there was just, a lack of enthusiasm on the buy side. So now as we come into this, we're effectively looking even below these two lows, being Tuesday and yesterday, Wednesday, and really potentially moving our way back down towards that 4240 area. Now, for me, I think an area of interest for me to potentially get long off of some sort of liquidation would first and foremost be the 4260, 4270 area, and then potentially the 4220 to 4240 area. Now, I will not build a trade in long, so do not take that as, oh, I'm going to buy 4280, 4270, 4260. That's absolutely not what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to observe how we respond in the 4260, 4270 area. And if that fails, observe what takes place in the 4220, 4240 area. Now, this works both ways. If I'm in a short trade, that's where I want to observe to see if change is occurring, peel some position off, so on and so forth. If I'm not in a trade, that's where I want to see if absorption is going to come in. Is a buyer going to step in? Is a buyer going to take on, absorption and try and push back on the sellers? So those are areas I'm definitely interested in monitoring here on the ES. Now, RTY is getting hammered here. Okay, RTY, on your day time frame, it's going to look very, very, crazy in a way. as far as what the day time frame is doing. Now, anybody who's ever traded with me knows I am not somebody who will sell below the 21-day moving average, and most certainly not somebody who will sell below the 50-day moving average, given the current market, given how the current market works. Now, I just quickly put this line on here, 2160 range. It's an area where you can see reaction has taken place. I would kind of use that as the low side of this upper balance range up here that we've been trading in. Again, we talked about above, that 2320 as being an area where they lack buying enthusiasm. Now you're getting that liquidation in R2I. Once we get down to 2160 and start to break potentially below 2160, I'm going to be looking for the opposite. I'm going to be looking not for buyers who are getting, unenthusiastic and potentially trapped. I'm going to be looking for sellers to potentially get in that same sort of predicament. So R2I today, not a touched market for me unless we open and liquidate down to 2160. Then I will start to observe the market for a potential trade. But as it stands right now, R2I made the initial move. And if there's one thing you're ever going to catch on to in the futures markets, especially the indexes, the small caps generally make the move prior to the other markets. So R2I being the small caps, starts to move down. Like we talked about, you had two back-to-back liquidation days, followed by what was yesterday's, pretty wild move. It was the first market to go. So we could start to see that continuation from the ES and the NQ and potentially the Dow. So that's where I'm at, R2I. Not a trading market for me today unless we get down to 2160, at which point, I want to observe and be potentially ready to enter into the market. As we move over to NQ, so here's our daily on the NQ. Again, something we've spoken about is the lack of enthusiasm above this upper trend line. Once again, we are seeing that. Once again, we're seeing NQ pull itself back through that trend line, potentially running towards our stronger and more, resilient line, which is the purple line here, which is right now sitting on your 21-day moving average. NQ, I potentially will trade NQ on the day time frame. What will get me into NQ is any kind of move back towards this trend line that fails. That will be a fade for me to target the downside of this channel. So that's what I'll be looking at for NQ. NQ itself on the profiles right now, let me just pull that up, make this a little bit more readable, is finding support in an area I would expect it to find support. Now, if this support fails, you don't really have anything left from my standpoint until, 468 to 460, at which point is another area to observe or a downside target if you do get on the short side of the market. Now, NQ, boy, oh boy, did they sell NQ. And remember, we had spoken about the potential of this being a strong firecracker move. And I think you're seeing that on the upside already. So if that market does come down to that 468, 460 area, I would be very, very, very cautious about just entering in long and being part of what could potentially be a stronger firecracker move to the downside. Early on in NQ, I'm going to be looking at it the same way as I'm going to be looking at ES. If we push and don't get any sort of enthusiastic sell with volume, remember volume will measure the moves today across all markets. If we don't get that enthusiasm, I want to go long in NQ. I know it sounds crazy, but we're in a buy the dip market, right? That's just what happens. Now, does that mean I'm just sitting there waiting to push the buy button? Absolutely not. That is not what I'm going to do. I'm going to observe the markets, see if a strong buyer enters. A strong buyer is found where? The DOM. If you see somebody on your DOM, your depth of market, your tape, who's stepping into the market to potentially reverse what has happened in the Globex session, that's who I want to get with. Likewise, I think it's very important to use T's high and potentially the 6 low, which is, what was that? Tuesday, sorry. Tuesday's low as an area of resistance. So similar to what the ES has given us, I think NQ has given us as well. So any move towards Tuesday's low that fails, that finds a seller, again, I want to look to fade that market. And then I have my targets built for me via the market structure. So that is where I'm at today. That's how I'm coming into the market today. I'm pretty calm, cool, and collected and ready to, take my patience and my opportunities as they come. And from that, we'll see what happens. So, I wish you guys a great trading day. Stay patient, stay safe, execute your plan, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.